Have you ever felt like the hardest part of chasing your dream is simply starting? Not because you don't care, not because you're lazy, but because something inside you whispers that you might not be good enough. This is the story of Mateo, a young man with a plan, a purpose, and a voice in his head that wouldn't let him begin. Chapter 1. The alarm. The alarm vibrated against the wooden nightstand, a dull, persistent buzz that filled the quiet room. Mateo opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the faint morning light leaking through the curtains. The world outside was still half asleep, but his mind was already racing. He reached for his phone before he even sat up. Notifications. Messages. Updates, a flood of information he didn't need, but scrolled through anyway, not out of interest, but out of habit. His thumb hovered over the screen as he exhaled, long and heavy. Another morning, another day. He felt behind before it even began. He sat up, rubbing the back of his neck, feeling the familiar tightness settle in. The room was small, quiet, and still, but inside him, something churned. The desk was the cleanest part of his room, not because he was organized, but because he kept clearing it, hoping that a blank space would spark a beginning. He sat down, opened his laptop, and watched the cursor blink on a white page. Blink, 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 a tiny pulse, a reminder that the world was waiting for him to do something. He had everything prepared, a content schedule, a list of ideas, a 3-month plan he had crafted with care and optimism. He had imagined himself following it with discipline, waking up early, creating consistently, building momentum. But now, staring at the screen, all that preparation felt distant, like someone else's plan, someone more capable. He rested his fingers on the keyboard. Nothing came. Minutes passed, then an hour. He checked his phone, rearranged the pens on his desk, opened a new tab, then another, then another. He watched videos he didn't care about, read articles he wouldn't remember, scrolled through feeds that left him feeling emptier than before. It wasn't procrastination, not really. It was fear wearing the mask of distraction. He wasn't avoiding the work. He was avoiding the possibility that the work wouldn't be good enough. The cursor kept blinking. Patient and unbothered, while Mateo drifted further away from the version of himself he wanted to be. Days began to blend into each other like watercolor bleeding across a page. He woke up later, stayed in bed longer, scrolled until his eyes burned, ate without tasting anything, thought constantly, did nothing. Every night, he lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the day pressing down on him. Why can't I just do it? The question echoed in his mind, heavy and familiar. He wasn't lazy, he wasn't unmotivated, but the guilt wrapped around him like a second blanket, warm, suffocating, impossible to escape. There are many voices in the world that can hurt you, but none cut deeper than the one inside your own mind. Mateo didn't notice when that voice first appeared. It didn't arrive with anger, it didn't shout, it didn't insult him outright. It whispered, softly, quietly, persistently, "You should be doing more. You're falling behind. You're wasting your potential." At first, it sounded like concern, like a mentor pushing him to be better. It felt like pressure disguised as motivation, but whispers have a way of growing roots. One night, the voice changed. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the digital clock. Mateo lay on his back, eyes open, mind racing. The voice sharpened. It grew teeth. "Other people can do this," it said. "Why can't you?" The words hit him like a punch he didn't see coming. He swallowed hard, staring at the ceiling as if it held the answer. But he had none. The silence that followed was louder than the voice itself. The next morning, he tried again. He sat at his desk, opened his laptop, and forced himself to type. One sentence. Delete. Another. Delete. His chest tightened. his breathing grew shallow, his thoughts scattered like birds startled by a sudden noise. He pressed his palms against the desk, trying to steady himself, trying to understand why something so simple felt like climbing a mountain with no summit. He wasn't tired. He wasn't distracted. He was overwhelmed by expectations, by fear, by the pressure to be perfect before he even began. Later, he sat on his bed, hands clasped, elbows resting on his knees. The room was quiet, but his mind wasn't. He stared at the floor, breathing slowly, trying to untangle the knot inside him. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't unmotivated. He wasn't incapable. He was afraid of failing, afraid of disappointing himself, afraid of discovering he wasn't as good as he hoped. Fear, he realized, had been steering him more than ambition ever had, and fear was a terrible driver. For the first time, he questioned the voice. What if it wasn't truth? What if it wasn't wisdom? What if it was fear pretending to be discipline? What if he didn't need to silence it, but understand it? The thought softened something inside him, a knot loosened, a breath he didn't know he'd been holding escaped. Maybe the problem wasn't that he couldn't start. Maybe the problem was believing he had to start perfectly. Maybe beginnings weren't supposed to be clean, maybe they were supposed to be messy. The next morning, the light through the window felt different, not brighter, just kinder. Mateo sat at his desk again, the cursor blinked, waiting. He placed his hands on the keyboard, took a slow breath, typed one sentence. He paused, read it, felt the familiar urge to delete it, but this time, he didn't. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was real. It was a beginning, and beginnings, he realized, were enough. Sometimes, the loudest battles happen in silence, not in front of crowds, not on stages, but alone, at a desk, in a bedroom, in the quiet moments when no one's watching. Mateo's story isn't just about starting, it's about facing the voice inside that says you can't. And choosing to begin anyway, because the truth is, you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be present, to show up, to take that first step. And if you've ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, or afraid to begin, you're not alone. If stories like this speak to you, if you love videos that inspire, reflect, and remind you to keep going, subscribe to my channel. There's more to come, and your journey matters.